The morning light filtered through the sheer curtains of my apartment, casting soft shadows across the hardwood floor. Portland had a way of being quiet in the early hours, hushed, almost apologetic. I stepped onto the balcony, coffee mug in hand, and looked out at the mist hanging low over the trees. That moment used to feel like solitude. Now it felt like proof that I'd been gone for 8 months and not a single member of my family had noticed. Sometimes the people closest to you forget to look your way. Not because you're invisible, but because they never looked at all. When I packed up and left Ohio, I didn't make a dramatic exit. No long goodbye speeches, no angry texts, just boxes, quiet ones, labeled by room. Office, books, kitchen essentials. I left behind more than a zip code. I left behind a version of myself who had waited far too long to be acknowledged. And now, here I was. 8 months later. Still not a phone call, not a text, nothing. Until yesterday. The envelope was beige, thin, creased, forwarded from my old apartment in Columbus to my Oregon address. The handwriting on the front was familiar. My mother's cursive, the kind she reserved for Christmas cards and mortgage checks. My name was spelled correctly, but the return address was wrong. It still said Ohio, like the move had never happened, like I hadn't existed in any other place but the one they assumed I stayed in. I opened it carefully, half expecting a holiday card delayed by mail. But it wasn't that. It was an invitation. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Elliot Larkin and Ava Jameson. I stopped reading. They didn't just forget I moved. They forgot I mattered. I dropped the invitation on the kitchen counter and stared at it, waiting for the feelings to rush in, maybe anger or bitterness. But all I felt was, wait, the kind you carry for so long it becomes background noise. I hadn't spoken to my brother in nearly a year. The last time we interacted, he tagged me in a meme about being the forgotten sibling. I untagged myself. He never followed up. A week before the invitation arrived, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. I pressed play. Hi, sweetie, it's Mom. Your brother's wedding is coming up in a few months. We were thinking, since things are going well for you now, you might be able to help cover some of the cost. Nothing huge, just $15,000. That's not much to someone like you now, right? Give me a call, okay? Love you. That voicemail played in my head every time I walked past the counter. $15,000. And not once in that message did she ask how I was. Not once did she say she missed me or ask why I hadn't come home. She hadn't even asked where I lived, just assumed. Assumed I was doing well. Assumed I was willing. Assumed I would give. I called her back the next morning, not because I wanted to talk, but because silence had become too generous. You didn't even know I moved, I said when she picked up. There was a pause. Well, honey, we figured you were busy. We didn't want to crowd you. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because if I didn't, I'd scream. There was no, we miss you. No, I'm sorry. Just a casual pitch for cash, as if I was the family ATM they forgot to deposit gratitude into. When I moved to Oregon, I didn't tell anyone, not out of spite, but out of surrender. My friends helped me pack. Julia cried when I handed her my old blender. Simon lifted boxes like they weighed nothing. As we loaded the last of it into the U-Haul, Julia looked at me and said, "Are you sure you don't want to tell them?" I remember taping shut the final box of books. Why would I? They didn't ask where I was before. Why start now? There was no farewell dinner, no goodbye hug, no, "We're proud of you." Just silence. So I gave them the same. Before I locked the door to my apartment in Columbus one last time, I left behind a photo frame on the windowsill. It was a picture of me at age 9, standing alone at a science fair table, holding a ribbon. No one else was in the frame. I left it there on purpose. A quiet little metaphor they'd probably never notice. Now, here in Portland, I sat at my desk staring at my bank account. Technically, yes, I could afford to write a check for 15 grand. But this wasn't about the money. It was about the message. Because when they remembered me, it wasn't to ask how I was doing. It was to ask what I could give. The RSVP card sat in my hand, light as air, The deadline was in 2 days. I was about to check, regretfully decline, and move on. But then my phone buzzed. Another message, and this one made my hands go cold. I played the voicemail again, as if the second time would somehow soften the blow. It didn't. Honey, we're putting together the budget, and we think you could cover the venue. Just $15,000. Nothing crazy. The way she said it, light, cheerful, almost like she was offering me the chance to sponsor a school play, made me want to throw my phone against the wall. I didn't, of course. I just sat there, blinking at the ceiling fan spinning in slow, lazy circles. I hadn't heard her voice in nearly a year, and this was what brought her back into my life. A budget request. I let the message play to the end again, her tone unwavering. You're doing great now, right? Just let us know soon. Love you. No question about how I was doing. No acknowledgement that I'd moved across the country and hadn't been home in nearly a year. Just a transactional ask, delivered like a grocery list. And I was supposed to say yes, because that's what daughters who turned out okay were supposed to do. My hand hovered over the delete button, but I pressed save instead. I wanted to remember exactly how it felt to be treated like a line item in someone else's budget. I went to pour another cup of coffee, but it had gone cold. I stood in the kitchen, staring at my reflection in the darkened microwave door, and suddenly, my mother's words from years ago echoed back. You're the independent one. We knew you'd be fine. Translation. We gave everything to your brother because we assumed you'd figure it out. And I did. I figured out how to apply for scholarships, how to work 2 jobs while carrying a full course load, how to patch the soles of my shoes with duct tape until I could afford better ones. All while Elliot got a fully paid tuition, a new car at graduation, and now apparently, a wedding fund. I sat back at my desk and opened my email. There it was, forwarded by my cousin Jess. A shared Google sheet titled, Elliot Ava Wedding Contributions. Rows of names and dollar amounts. One caught my eye. Joshua Varnum, $15,000, venue deposit. Joshua. They couldn't even get my name right. I stared at the screen, unsure whether to laugh or scream. Misnamed, misgendered, misplaced. They had written me out so thoroughly they didn't even notice when they replaced me with someone who didn't exist. If they can't even remember who I am, I whispered to myself. Why should I help fund their fantasy? The worst part wasn't the mistake. It was knowing no one on that list would catch it either. They'd just nod, smile, and move on. Because that's what they always did. My phone buzzed. A message from Grandma Malis. They may not see it, but I do. You've done so well, Celine. 6 words. That's all. And somehow, they kept me from detonating. I stared at her text for a long time. Then I exhaled. Deeply. Slowly. No, I wouldn't call my mom back. But I also wouldn't let this slide into silence like every other insult had. I opened a new email and addressed it to the group planning thread. I kept my tone measured. No anger, no dramatics. I'm happy Elliot's getting married, but I won't be contributing financially to this event. Please remove my name from all planning documents moving forward. No justification, no softening the blow, just a clear, polite exit from the conversation. I hit send. 5 minutes later, the spreadsheet updated. The line once labeled Joshua Varnum now read Anonymous, TBD. Then the group chat exploded, and I hadn't even opened my mouth yet. My phone buzzed non-stop the next morning. I ignored the first few vibrations, trying to hold on to the quiet that had carried me through the night. But eventually, curiosity, or maybe instinct, won. I picked it up and saw the flood. Family group chat, missed calls, screenshots, messages like, "You embarrassed Mom. Why are you making this difficult?" And then, a private message from my cousin Claire. I probably shouldn't tell you this, but they gave Eddie $50K for his new house. I dropped the phone onto the bed like it burned. $50,000, not for school, not for medical bills, for a house, a wedding present, maybe, a thanks for existing fund. I wasn't sure what stung more, what he got, or the fact that it never even crossed their minds to offer me the same. I sat back in the chair at my desk, staring at my muted monitor, and felt the room tilt slightly under the weight of memory. I was 17 when I asked Dad if they could help with my college tuition. We were in the kitchen, and he was spreading cream cheese on a bagel like he didn't even hear me. When he finally spoke, it was without looking up. We already put most of it aside for Eddie's future. But you're smart. You'll figure something out. That moment never left me. I did figure it out. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I worked late shifts at the bookstore. I skipped family holidays to pick up extra hours. Meanwhile, Eddie was throwing beer-fueled bonfires in our backyard and bragging about finding himself between semesters abroad. No one ever checked if I had enough to eat, if I was sleeping, if I was drowning. Independence wasn't a virtue in our house, it was a sentence, and I served every day of it while Eddie was handed a key to the kingdom. The screen lit up again, pulling me from the memory. This time, it was a group text reminder about Eddie's housewarming party, fourth one in 2 weeks. I hadn't received a single message about my new apartment when I moved to Oregon, not even a congratulations. I opened the photos Claire had forwarded from his new place. White cabinets, quartz counters, built-in speakers in every room. Dad was in one of the pictures, holding a beer, his arm wrapped around Eddie's shoulders like a prized trophy. My mother's caption read, "So proud of our boy." Every bit of this he earned. Earned. I mentally listed what Eddie had earned so far: full tuition, new car, travel money, and now a down payment for a home. And yet, I was the one asked to write the check for his wedding venue. No mention of support, just assumption. A thought crept in, sharp and unwanted. Maybe it wasn't that they forgot me. Maybe they erased me. I opened a text thread with my mother, paused, then typed, "You never offered me a dime. Why do you expect one now?" She replied hours later, "We knew you'd figure it out." Eddie needed a leg up. I stared at those words for a long time, not even a hint of apology, just a matter-of-fact justification. She wasn't sorry. They'd just never cared enough to invest in me. My success was a byproduct of being left behind. I didn't scream. I didn't type back. Instead, I opened a folder on my laptop labeled Documents. I created a new subfolder and titled it Proof I Paid a Loan. I dragged in copies of old tuition invoices, scholarship letters, rent receipts, photos of my first basement apartment, not because anyone would ever ask, but because I needed to stop letting them rewrite the story. They didn't build me. I built in spite of them. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting a delivery. I hadn't ordered anything. I walked slowly to the front door and looked through the peephole. No one there. But on the welcome mat sat a medium-sized box. No label. No return address. But the handwriting on the top? I hadn't seen that in over 15 years, and it was never used kindly. I hadn't even opened my mouth, and yet the whole group exploded. That's what Claire said in her message that morning anyway. "Your name's gone." They removed it and replaced it with anonymous, TBD. Then it all blew up. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the screen, letting the absurdity sink in. The wedding spreadsheet had kicked me out like a glitch in the system, but the real gut punch came a few minutes later when Claire messaged again. "I saw the list. You're not on it, like, at all." "What list?" I typed back. "The planning chat? Everyone's in it. Aunts, uncles, even Ava's niece. But not you." I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my phone and scrolled through my own message threads. Nothing from Eddie. No group invite. No heads up. No accidental text meant for someone else that landed in my inbox by mistake. Silence. There are silences louder than screaming. This was one of them. Claire sent me a screenshot. At the top, Elliot plus Ava Wedding Planning Dream Team. Below it, a sea of icons, smiling faces, hearts, confetti. My name wasn't there. Neither was my profile picture. It wasn't a mistake. I hadn't just been overlooked. I'd been erased. Scrolling through the conversation was like reading minutes from a board meeting I'd never been hired for. Cake flavors, DJ deposits, seating charts. Vera had posted twice, giving praise for how inclusive everything was. The irony nearly made me laugh, but it didn't. I just felt cold. I set the phone down and walked to the window. Portland's skies were gray, the clouds hanging low like a curtain that refused to rise. The trees swayed, as if mocking me with their steadiness. I picked up the phone again and did something I rarely did. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Celine?" "Hi," I said. "Quick question. Am I invited to this wedding?" A pause. "You made it pretty clear where you stand," she said. We thought it'd be awkward. I waited, giving her the chance to add something, anything, an apology, a reconsideration, a trace of discomfort, but she offered none. "Right," I said. "Then don't expect my silence to fund your noise." Another pause. Then, "That's not fair, Celine." "You're right," I said. "It never has been." And I ended the call. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at the chair across from me. The last time I'd seen my mother in person, she'd sat in that chair, sipping wine like it was holy water, dissecting my decision to move west as if it were a personal attack. That night, she'd said, "You always think you're better than us." What she didn't understand was that I never thought I was better. I just wanted to be seen as equal. It wasn't the first time I'd been left out, not even close. Birthdays, graduations, holidays where I got the invite a day before. There was always some excuse, some explanation. It was a mix-up. "We thought you were busy. We didn't want to bother you." But this was different. This time, they didn't bother lying. At least now the door was clearly closed. No more wondering if I'd missed something. No more questioning if it was just bad timing or forgotten logistics. They didn't want me there. I opened my journal, the one I kept locked in a drawer, away from emails and messages and screens. I flipped to a blank page and wrote, "Not being invited isn't rejection. It's liberation." This was never about the party, or the flowers, or the dress. It was about the narrative, the one they kept writing without me, the version of our family that didn't include the messy parts, the inconvenient people, the ones who remembered things differently. "If you have to beg for a seat at the table," I wrote, "it's not your table." I sat back and breathed. Deeply. Evenly. It was close to midnight when I finally stood up, stretched, and headed for bed. I had just turned off the lights when my phone buzzed. An email. Subject. Formal notice. Family wedding plans. And just like that, they turned this into a contract. Literal, legal, and deeply personal. The email's subject line stared at me like a warning label. Clarification of family expectations and roles for upcoming wedding. I already knew it wasn't a joke. My mother had always loved playing administrative queen. When we were kids, she color-coded our chore charts. Now, she was drafting legal-style memos for her own son's wedding, like it was a corporate merger. I clicked it open. "Dear Celine, we hope this message finds you well. As we continue planning Elliot and Ava's upcoming celebration, we are aligning financial and participatory roles across the family to ensure clarity and balance. In light of your recent communication, we would appreciate confirmation of your status, both in terms of presence and support. If you're unable to contribute or appear, future considerations may be reevaluated. We're aiming for mutual benefit and family alignment. Love, Mom." My eyes scanned the sentence again. Future considerations may be reevaluated. It was a subtle enough threat to hide under niceties, but the message was clear. The will, the inheritance. Whatever promises had been vaguely dangled over the years were now being weaponized. I didn't care about the money. I hadn't for a long time. But the entitlement, the way they wielded it like I owed them something, that part boiled my blood. I leaned back, letting my chair tilt slightly, and closed my eyes. It wasn't the words that stung. It was the coldness, the formality, the way my own mother had managed to make me feel like a business liability instead of her daughter. And then, as if on cue, a memory surfaced, Eddie's high school graduation. "Celine, can you help him write something heartfelt?" Mom had asked, back when she still pretended to be interested in my talents. "You're good with words." I had stayed up late with him that night, helping him craft something that sounded sincere but effortless. He got a standing ovation. People told him it was the best speech they'd heard from a high schooler. He soaked in the praise, looked out at the crowd, and thanked our parents, his teachers, his coach, and everyone who supported me. Not a word about me. Not then, not after. I clapped like everyone else. Then I went home and deleted the draft from my computer. They only remembered me when I was useful. The memory faded, and I opened a new email draft. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. I typed one sentence. You may remove me from all considerations, financial or otherwise. I have no further obligations. I stared at it for a full minute. My cursor blinked like a heartbeat. Then I deleted it. Instead, I pulled up my contacts and tapped Maureen, my friend from law school days, now a family attorney. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, stranger, she said, her voice warm. You okay? I need help updating my power of attorney and removing 2 names. She didn't ask who. Later that night, I didn't reply to my mother's email. I didn't even mark it as read. I just blocked her email address. I sat at my dining table with a pen and a stack of paper and wrote a letter to Grandma Malis. Dear Grandma, I wanted to explain, not because I owe them anything, but because I owe you the truth. I'm not leaving the family. I'm leaving the fiction they've been writing with my silence. Love, Celine. I folded it neatly, slipped it into an envelope, and sealed it with care. After that, I opened my documents folder. I updated my emergency contacts, removed Mom and Dad, added Grandma Malis and 2 close friends, people who knew where I lived, what I did, and who never once asked me to prove my worth. I pulled up my will and made sure nothing linked to Ohio anymore. No fallback names. No, just in case. Only people I trusted. There was a strange kind of peace in it. For the first time, my paperwork reflected my reality. As I sealed the envelope to Grandma, my phone lit up. Unknown number. I froze. Then I saw the name. Eddie. I hadn't heard his voice since graduation, and I had no idea what side he was calling from. I let Eddie's name sit on my phone screen for a full minute before answering. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. It was as if time had paused just long enough to ask, "Are you sure?" I pressed accept. "Hey, Celine," he said, like we'd just chatted last week. His voice hadn't changed. Still casual, still smooth, still annoyingly confident. "I heard you were upset. I didn't mean for things to get weird." Weird. That's what he called it. I didn't respond right away. My silence stretched too long, but I wasn't about to rescue him from it. He kept going. "Mom said you felt left out. That's not what anyone wanted." I swallowed the laugh that almost escaped. "No, Eddie. What you wanted was money. You just didn't think you'd have to deal with me to get it." Another pause. This time, he didn't fill it. "I just thought you were okay with all this. You've always been the one who didn't need anything." I hung up without another word. 10 minutes later, I remembered the box by the front door, the one that had arrived the night before, the one I'd been too tired to deal with. I opened it with a box cutter, slicing through the tape with mechanical detachment. Inside was a framed photo of Eddie and Ava in front of their new house. A thank you card sat on top, cheap and impersonal. I opened it expecting something vague, "Thanks for your support," or "We couldn't have done it without you." Instead, I found my own crumpled check, the one I'd mailed 3 months earlier with a note saying, "Use this for whatever you two need." It had never been cashed. Tucked beside it was a handwritten note, my mother's handwriting. "We didn't want to confuse things by letting Eddie know it came from you." Confuse things. I sat down slowly, the weight of betrayal sharper than I anticipated. They hadn't just intercepted the money. They'd hidden it. They'd kept me from even being acknowledged. And Eddie didn't know. I snapped a photo of the note and the check, sent it to his number with no caption. A minute passed, then another. He finally replied, "Wait, what is this?" I called him again. He answered immediately. "That was the check I sent," I said, voice steady. "3 months ago, for your new house." "You sent that?" he asked, like it had never even crossed his mind. "Yes, and Mom decided it was better to pretend I didn't." He went quiet. I pressed on. "Kind of like the loan I gave you back in 2017. Remember that one? When you wanted to start that real estate app? That was a gift, wasn't it?" "No, Eddie," I said, teeth clenched. "It was $12,000. You signed an email saying you'd pay me back by the end of 2019. He gave a short laugh. Come on, that was years ago. And you never paid a cent. I could hear him exhale. You're really still bitter about that? Bitter. That word again. Used to dismiss, to minimize, to turn the injured into the problem. I'm not bitter, I said. I'm done being the family ATM, and I'm done letting people rewrite history because it's more convenient. He scoffed. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Then don't worry, I said. You won't have to deal with me anymore. I ended the call. That afternoon, I started gathering receipts, old emails, bank statements, screenshots. I organized them into a folder on my desktop. Family debt and dignity. Not for court, not for revenge, for me, so I'd never again be gaslit into doubting what happened. The next morning, I called my bank and stopped payment on the old check. It hadn't been cashed yet, but now it never would be. Then I drafted a letter, short, firm, unmistakably clear. To Eddie Larkin, effective immediately, no future financial requests will be considered without formal written agreement and legal documentation. This is not personal. This is protective. Boundaries aren't punishment, they're protection. Celine, I printed 2 copies, one I kept. One I folded neatly into an envelope. As I sealed it, my phone buzzed. A PayPal notification. Eddie Larkin has requested $500. That request was the last straw. But not the last move. I was finally ready to play offense. The PayPal request hit like a slap. It came in at 7:14 a.m., right as I was stepping out of the shower. The subject line alone, wedding weekend logistics, your share, Sam, was enough to make me stare at the screen like it had grown a second head. I clicked into it anyway. $500. No explanation, no greeting, just a digital invoice from Eddie with that smug little smiley face at the end, like we were old friends splitting brunch. They weren't asking, they were just sending bills. I deleted the request immediately, but not before taking a screenshot. My hands were still damp, and the towel slipped a little as I pulled open the photo folder on my phone. I saved it under a new album, Receipts. By noon, things escalated. I tried checking the wedding planning group chat, gone, kicked out. Then I logged into Facebook, blocked by Vera. My own mother, no warning, no message, just vanished from her digital orbit like I'd never existed. Curiosity took over. I checked Eddie's Instagram. His story was a slideshow of polished rehearsal dinner moments and staged laughter. Champagne glasses raised, arms wrapped around waists. Someone had tagged him in a post with the caption, "Couldn't have done it without the tribe, the ones who show up." Eddie's response? A reshare with "My people, always." And then there was Vera's comment. Some people know the meaning of family, others forget. That one knocked the wind out of me. I hadn't cried in weeks. I'd done too much work building walls, but reading that line, I felt something collapse inside. It wasn't the exclusion that hurt. It was the deliberate nature of it, the performance. This wasn't neglect. It was strategy. They wanted me out, and they wanted everyone else to feel good about it. I sat at my desk and opened a new folder on my laptop. Family Optics versus Family Reality. I began compiling. Screenshots, chat logs, the payment request, the blocked profiles. The wedding spreadsheet from last week with anonymous TBD next to the venue cost. You can't gaslight someone who's got receipts. Later that night, as I was reheating leftover stir-fry, I got tagged in a video. A family friend had posted footage from Eddie's engagement party. I clicked on it while standing barefoot in my kitchen, chopsticks in one hand. The video opened with Eddie standing beside Ava, holding a glass of wine. He was smiling wide. "I just want to thank my mom," he said, "and all my cousins, my fiancé, and every sibling who stood by me." I stopped the video. Every sibling. I'm the only one. I set my food down and pressed the power button on my phone until the screen went black. They weren't just ignoring me. They were pretending I didn't exist. I didn't throw anything. I didn't scream. I went to my bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and opened the Notes app. I drafted a message to Eddie and Vera. It was short, brutal, honest. But I didn't send it. I didn't need to. Instead, I opened my camera app and began recording. My voice was calm, my tone controlled. It wasn't for them. It was for me. If I'm going to be the villain in your story, I said into the lens, I might as well speak my truth in mine. As I finished the video, my phone buzzed again. A message from my cousin, Jordan. Hey, they're rewriting history. You need to see this. I didn't expect an ally, but I was about to get a front row seat to the performance of a lifetime. It started with a text from Jordan. My cousin had been quiet since the fallout, neither liking nor commenting on anything, which in my family usually meant silence was the safest move. But this morning, she sent me a screenshot with no caption. It was the wedding website. There we were, or rather, there they were. A group photo from when we were kids, taken in the backyard of my parents' old house in Cincinnati. A perfect golden hour image. Eddie, front and center, arms around two cousins, Vera and Dad smiling like politicians in the back. My face had been cropped out. I zoomed in just to be sure. The edge of my shoulder was there, barely visible behind Eddie's elbow. My smile, once open and eager, gone. Just white fence and shadows now. The caption read, "Our tight-knit family, since forever." I stared at the image until my vision blurred, not because I hadn't expected it, but because even when you brace for the blow, it still lands. That afternoon, while making tea, I opened Facebook out of habit. Vera had posted a new status. Grateful for family who show up. Some people forget where they come from. The comments rolled in. So true. Some kids just turn out ungrateful. Always knew you were the glue, Vera. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The performance was for them. But I remembered something Maya Angelou once said. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I clicked Save Post and archived it into my folder labeled The Archive. A collection of truths masked as digital debris, screenshots, private messages, bank transfers, wedding lists, all in one place now. I found the original photo on my hard drive, the unedited one, and there I was, beside Eddie, a hand on his shoulder, face lit up with pride. I had helped throw that party, bought the cake, decorated the yard. They didn't crop me out because I wasn't there. They cropped me out because I was... The difference mattered. This wasn't erasure by accident. It was curated invisibility. I began documenting dates, timestamps, and quotes, not to post, not to share, but because clarity matters when gaslighting becomes the family dialect. This isn't revenge, I thought. It's protection. It's self-respect. It's clarity. That night, I messaged Grandma Malis. Nothing heavy, just a check-in. She replied almost instantly. Their lies won't last, but your truth will. I wrote that down in ink and pinned it above my desk. Then I opened my camera and hit record. Not for YouTube, not for social media, just for me. Dear future me, I began. This is the chapter you stop apologizing for being the one who remembers things too clearly. I was halfway through when my phone rang. Jordan again. You won't believe what I just heard, she said breathlessly. They're going to announce at the rehearsal dinner that you refused to attend out of spite. They want to explain your absence before someone else asks. I exhaled through my nose, steady and calm. They're calling it a personal choice, trying to get ahead of the gossip. Of course they were. I stood up, walked to my window, and looked out at the pine trees swaying against the orange-gray sky. Well, I said, then it's time I show them what real presence looks like. I clicked upload on my video. It wasn't public yet, but it was time-stamped, archived, truthful. The world may never see it, but if they come for me again, I'll be ready. The morning fog in Forest Park hadn't yet lifted when my phone buzzed with the first of many messages. I was halfway through my hike, deliberately off-grid and offline, when it lit up like an emergency siren. I ignored the first notification. Then came another, and another. By the time I returned to the trailhead, my phone was a minefield of pings, group texts, social DMs, and one message from Jordan that simply said, "They said you refused to come out of spite. You should see what's being said." I sat in my car, sweaty and slightly winded, and opened her message thread. Screenshot after screenshot filled the screen. My mother, standing at the rehearsal dinner with a microphone, telling the room, Celine chose not to attend. She's busy building her career and didn't feel this event aligned with her schedule. Another image, text between two ants. She's always been difficult. She never appreciated what her parents did for her. It wasn't just that I wasn't there. It was that they needed me not to be, to keep the illusion intact. My absence had become a prop for their performance. It was never about an empty chair. It was about the story they could tell to fill it. Later that afternoon, another text came in, this one from a college friend who'd somehow been invited to the wedding through Eddie's fiancé. Just saw the family photo on Facebook. Odd question, weren't you in that original picture? My heart dropped. I clicked the link she sent, a wedding post from Vera's profile, captioned, "A family that grows together, stays together." In the image, I recognized the photo instantly. It was from Eddie's graduation cookout. Backyard, sunlight filtering through the oak trees, red and white picnic tables. Only something was wrong. My face, blurred out, like a smudge in the memory. Everyone else crisp and clear, even the dog. Jordan confirmed it. They used the old photo. Your shoulders still visible. They literally blurred just your face. It didn't feel real, like someone had taken an eraser to my existence, not because they forgot, but because remembering me would have made things messy. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I stared at the photo and felt hollow. That night, I opened the video I'd recorded weeks ago, the one I'd never intended to share. I sent it to Jordan. Just her. Within minutes, she responded, "They need to hear this." "They won't," I replied. "It wasn't made for them. It was made for me." The calm in my own voice surprised me. I lit a candle and opened my journal. How many hours, how many years had I spent trying to earn a place in a family that required me to disappear in order to fit in? And now I finally understood. They didn't hate me. They hated that I didn't crumble when they shut the door. They need to believe I'm bitter, selfish, cold, I wrote, because that justifies their treatment. But I'm not broken. And that scares them. I paused, then added, when they tell your story without you, make sure you still know your truth. I closed the book, put the pen down. Peace didn't ask for permission, and I wasn't going to wait for theirs. Later that night, another message came in, a name I hadn't seen light up in months. "Your mom wants to talk," Jordan texted. "She says she didn't mean for this to happen." I didn't reply, not because I didn't care, but because for once, I finally did. About myself. 1 week after the wedding, the silence broke, not with my voice, but with theirs. It was Jordan again, my unexpected lifeline in a family that no longer saw me as one of them. "They're scrambling," she said over the phone. Ava's parents started asking questions at brunch. "What kind of questions?" I asked, even though I already had a guess. "About you, why you weren't there, why no one mentioned you in any speeches." I closed my eyes, letting her words settle over me like the first rain after drought. Not anger, not even satisfaction, just a strange, grounding gravity. "They didn't buy the excuse," she continued. "Something about you being too focused on your career to attend." Her tone shifted. "They're not stupid, Celine. They smelled a lie." I didn't say much, just thanked her. We hung up, and I sat at my desk, staring at the envelope still on the corner. Certified mail receipt attached. I had declined participation, formally, legally, permanently. Inside that envelope was a letter that simply read, "I will not be attending or contributing to any future family events. This is not estrangement. This is boundary." It was signed, dated, delivered, and, as I'd confirmed, received and signed for by Vera herself. For the first time, I had drawn a line I wouldn't erase later in guilt. Another message buzzed in, this one from Claire. "Your mom looked stiff at the reception. People were watching. She couldn't fake her way through it." I imagined the scene, Vera, dressed to the nines, plastered smile cracking under the weight of casual questions and whispered suspicions, and Eddie, probably deflecting like he always did. She's just different. She always thought she was better. Or maybe his favorite. She didn't want to be part of it. But this time, their words weren't enough. The audience had changed. That afternoon, my phone rang again. The screen flashed, unknown caller. I let it go to voicemail. Minutes later, I listened to her message. Celine, it's your mother. I don't know what's going on anymore. Family means something, even if you've forgotten that. She sighed like she'd been holding her breath for years. I hope you find your way back. We'll be here. Eventually. I replayed the message once, then deleted it. No hesitation. That evening, I did something unexpected. I called the old house number, just once. A young woman answered. Hi, I'm calling for Vera or Horace Larkin. Silence on the other end. I don't know anyone by that name, she said. I just handle their mail while the property's under contract. Under contract? I blinked. Oh, okay, thanks. Wait, who is this? No one, I said. No one you'd know. I hung up, sat there, staring at the wall. I don't know a Celine. That phrase echoed in my head, not with pain, but with peace. They don't know me. They never tried. And I'm finally okay with that. The next morning, while finishing my tea, an email pinged into my inbox. Subject, speaking invitation. Topic, rewriting boundaries after estrangement. I smiled, fingers hovering over the reply button. It was time to turn the silence they handed me into a microphone they couldn't mute. The text came through just after sunrise. The sender was labeled simply, Mom. I hadn't deleted the contact, just moved it to a place I rarely scrolled. Still, her name felt foreign when it lit up my screen. We miss you. We didn't mean for things to go this far. No apology, just an echo of guilt wrapped in a bow of familiarity. A last-minute grab for control dressed up like compassion. I stared at the message for a long time without touching it. Then I let the screen go dark, along with the urge to respond. Later that morning, I dialed a number that always centered me. Hi, Grandma. Sweetheart, she said, her voice a balm. How are you holding up? I didn't pretend this time. I'm in transition. She chuckled softly. Sounds like a woman making peace. We talked for nearly 20 minutes, the conversation drifting like a slow current, never rushed, never surface level. Before we hung up, she said something that stayed with me. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself too. That sentence cracked something open, not with tears, but with relief. That afternoon, I pulled out the framed photo in the hallway. It had been hanging there since I moved in, a carefully curated family image from a holiday I hadn't even enjoyed. I took it down, not with anger, not with ceremony, just clarity. In its place, I put up a photo of me at my college graduation, alone, beaming in a cap too big for my head, diploma clutched with both hands. No one from my family had been there. I'd asked. They had travel plans. I didn't look at that photo as proof of loneliness anymore. I looked at it and saw resilience. That moment was mine, not because they weren't there, but because I was. Later that evening, I opened my email drafts. One in particular had been sitting untouched for months. A letter I wrote to Vera during one of my more forgiving moods. It was filled with questions I no longer needed answers to. Why didn't you fight for me? Why did I always have to be the one to bend? I read it again, not with shame, but with distance. Then I hit delete. No more words for people who never listened. The next morning, I pulled the last moving box from my closet. It had been tucked away behind winter coats and unopened linens. Inside were books I hadn't touched, a candle I never lit, and a sweater that still smelled faintly like the house I left behind. I unpacked it all. As I slid books onto the shelf and folded sweaters into drawers, something shifted. The apartment felt less like a space I was borrowing and more like a place I belonged to. I lit the candle. The scent, vanilla and cedar, bloomed into the room. I didn't walk away from my family. I walked toward myself. Around noon, as I folded the box flat for recycling, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anything, but curiosity nudged me to open the door. There, on the mat, was a package, no return address. Inside, wrapped in brown tissue, was a small frame. The photo was old but familiar. Me and Grandma Malis at the county fair, cotton candy in hand, grinning like fools. She must have found it buried somewhere in an old album. Across the bottom of the frame, in her handwriting, chosen family. There were still things I couldn't fix, but also things I could finally choose. The email came in just after breakfast. Subject line, speaking invitation. Keynote, rebuilding identity. After family estrangement. I blinked, then reread it twice. It wasn't spam. It wasn't a mistake. It was addressed to me directly, referencing the quiet little video Jordan had posted from my private archive. Apparently, it had made its way through quiet channels, support groups, private threads, reposted with anonymity and resonance. My voice hadn't gone viral, but it had gone far enough to matter. I clicked reply. Yes, I'd love to speak. Later that afternoon, I sat at my desk with my laptop open. No music, no distractions, just the soft hum of traffic outside and the weight of years that had finally settled into something solid beneath my feet. I didn't write with anger. I didn't write to prove a point. When people rewrite your story, I typed, sometimes the loudest thing you can do is tell the truth with calm. I rehearsed it once, then again. And then I closed my laptop, smiled quietly to myself, and walked into the kitchen to make tea. The following week, Jordan texted, "People keep asking if they can share your video wider. It's really resonating." I told him yes, not because I wanted attention, but because truth deserves oxygen. By the weekend, it was showing up in trauma forums, on Reddit threads, and in curated Instagram stories. Nothing flashy, just captions like, "This is the closure I never knew I needed." Someone finally said what we couldn't. I didn't read the comments. I didn't need to. The ones that reached me were passed along from people who didn't expect a thank you. They just wanted me to know it mattered. Then came a letter. Not an email, not a DM. A real letter in Grandma Malis's hand. Inside she'd written, "They can deny who you were, but they can't erase who you've become." Tucked beside it was a photo I hadn't seen in decades. Me, age 5, standing in a library, clutching a book to my chest like a secret I'd been trusted with. On the back, she'd scrawled, "Always the quiet one, but always the one watching." I wept. Not because of sadness, but because someone had seen the version of me that even I forgot existed. That night, I made final edits to my own life. I updated my emergency contact list. Again. Vera and Horace were long gone. Their names removed from every legal form, every insurance document, every next of kin line that once tethered me to them by obligation. I finalized my healthcare proxy. I appointed Malis and Jordan as executors of my wishes. I placed the certificate from the panel speech in a new frame and positioned it on my shelf next to awards I used to think mattered more. My name wasn't just on paper now. It was a boundary, it was a legacy, and it was mine. As I tidied my workspace, a new notification buzzed on my phone. A text. Unknown number. "We heard what you said. If you're ready to talk, we are too." I didn't respond. Some chapters deserve to end without a sequel.